Hello, everyone. We're into week 9 of college football. Another exciting week of play, and we're going to really focus on the ACC and the SEC as we do every week. But let's talk a little football with James.
What's going on, world? It's your boy at Big Game James _36, and I'm here with Greg McGarity, and we're bringing to you what we do every week, the TaxSlayer Gator Bowl Drive to Selection presented by Toyota, where each and every week we go over the week of college football, upcoming and previous, and talk about how it relates to the TaxSlayer Gator Bowl played here in primetime, Jacksonville, Florida, January 2nd. The cool thing is the way things are shaking up, we're going to get some big names. So we know that. Or at least I feel that. Or college football has probably never been more had more parity this year, in particular in the SEC than what we've seen. But last week's games were pretty good, pretty exciting. There were a couple. It's across the board. It wasn't, but there were some ones that were really, really, really good. And in the SEC and the ACC side. So what we'll do is we'll talk about last week first, and because there's some games that were bigger on the SEC. Let's go to the ACC and talk about some of the shocks and surprising things. Duke is now, well, Duke was 6-1 or 5-1 before.
Yeah.
They now Duke is bowl eligible, and they accomplished something that they haven't ever done. They beat Florida State. Man, Florida State started from having aspirations to having nothing. And Notre Dame beat Georgia Tech, but that doesn't really affect it. But talk about FSU seeming their fall and Miami's rise, because whether you like it or not, they continue winning. The Cardiac Canes continue to win.
Well, they once again they just played good football on Saturday, and you mentioned what a great schedule of games it was. Man, you didn't leave the sofa from 12 noon until probably 12 midnight with the Louisville Miami game. But again, they always find a way to win. It's going to really be interesting. Rivalry games are different, and you know that better than anyone. And anytime you get rivalries involved, these guys are friends with each other. They're competitors. And again, it comes down to who plays the best, most fundamental brand of football. That's usually who wins. But Miami's going great guns. FSU, can they get back on track? We'll see if they can kind of stabilize something at quarterback.
Yeah, you saw Brock Glenn didn't play very well. Luke came in, had some moments. Miami's a tough opponent. Defense, bend but don't break. Offense, very explosive, very opportunistic. Cam Ward's got those guys going. Definitely one of the top guys in the Heisman talks right now. Going over into the SEC, we'll start off with Alabama has been one of the premium teams since 2008, I believe. Since 2008, they've always been up there at the top. Tennessee has been a team that kind of comes up. They look good, and then they fall. But it was a great game. Tennessee went in there and got the victory, which was kind of shocking. But Josh Heupel has those guys explosive and exciting.
Yeah, I think the home atmosphere kind of surprised Alabama. I don't know how many penalties they had in the first half, but needless to say, and I think they even admitted it, they weren't ready for that type of environment. Tennessee was, but Tennessee didn't score any points in the first half. So sometimes it takes a second half to get some teams going and figuring things out and making adjustments at halftime. But Tennessee really is on a roll, and really the only real difficult game they have left on their schedule, I think, is against Georgia and Athens in 2 or 3 weeks. So they're on a pathway to have some success and maybe earn a college football playoff spot. Who knows? But I think their season's going to boil down to the Georgia game in Athens this year.
Dover has to figure that out. That's that second half. The second half they've got to be able to get that a little bit more sewn up. Going back to that tough game that you just talked about that Tennessee does still have on the schedule. Georgia's schedule is crazy, and this is just how good of a coach Kirby Smart is. And I'm going to give you props because it would have never happened had you not have hired him. But Georgia went to #1 Texas after they dropped the game to Bama. Everybody was like, okay, well, Kirby's now finally shown a dent, a chink in the armor. They go in and they actually win very convincingly.
Well, I think Kirby obviously had the guys ready to play, and I think Texas, one writer had mentioned that it was the biggest football game in Austin in 60 years.
Oh, wow.
And they had the Formula One day on Sunday, and they had all of the dignitaries that were on the sidelines. I mean, every stop was pulled out. But Georgia played great defensively. They set the tone early. Offense did what they had to do, even though they had, I think, 8 or 9 drops
Mm-hmm.
in the game. But and one of the oddities in college football is the call on pass interference, bottles on the field, things like that. I don't think we've ever seen that before, but it kind of showed the resiliency of Georgia being able to overcome that call and have a 90-yard drive in there to kind of not put the game away, to put them back up by 2 scores. But needless to say, he had the kids ready to play, and it was a monumental win and really helped Georgia uh, take the next step. They've still got to play at Ole Miss. They still have Tennessee. They've got Florida coming up in a couple of weeks, and Florida's playing much, much
Mm-hmm.
better. So, again, you can't take a weekend off in college football, and we'll just see how Texas and Vandy do this weekend. I think, Alabama loss probably woke Texas up to say, wait a minute, we can't take this team for granted.
Right.
And heck, Vandy's just one game away from being bowl eligible too.
Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Again, one of those things that the old adage in football is if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none. But the rotation of Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning, they had no answers. That was what was crazy. Texas offensive line is so good.
Yeah.
They have so many playmakers out in space, and just Georgia just blanketed them and just jumped out on them. And if Carson didn't have, or they didn't have the drops,
Right.
they didn't have the turnovers. I was kind of hoping that you could have saw a 63-3 thing going on here with Georgia. And I could have got some of that pressure off of Florida State right now. Like you said, there was still some other good games there. Florida did look really, really good with DJ Lagway being able to play against Kentucky. I was shocked about how dominant they were. So now, again, Florida went from looking like we got to fire our coach. We need to give them some more time.
Yeah. And I think going in, everybody thought they would have 4 wins by now. And so they're kind of on schedule to do what they were supposed to do. I think the way Florida lost early in the year probably sent people into maybe a false sense of doom. Now they're settled at quarterback. They know who's going to be there. I just think they have to be careful with him because there's nobody behind him.
Mm-hmm.
So the luxury of having 2, 1A and 1B is gone now due to Mertz being gone. But Lagway certainly showed out well against Kentucky, and Kentucky's really struggling right now, and so a lot of dynamics. But these next 2-3 weeks are going to sift things out on who's playing up and down.
I'm going to this next week again. Another good week. We got some rivalry games. We'll go to the SEC first. So you've got Missouri, whose offense is supposed to be more high powered and potent. They woke up against Auburn late, but they're going up against Alabama. So Alabama's facing another team that can score and put pressure on that offense. You brought up Texas and Vandy, which is, who would have thought Texas and Vandy would be an interesting game in Nashville, and the get you some pancake pantry and then going over there to check out that game. Missouri, Alabama. Is this in LSU A&M? We talked about off camera about playoff type games inside of the conference. Are these must wins for these guys to be able to be in hopes for the SEC championship?
I think so. I think it's an elimination game for whoever loses those 2 games. Missouri going into Alabama. How does Alabama respond? We'll see. I think it'll tell you a lot about their program, the culture that they have, how aggressive they play. And then LSU on the road at A&M. Again, LSU's hot right now. They had a great win at Ole Miss recently. But going into A&M, they've done a great job there. The environment's going to be nuts there. So, again, I think those 2 are CFP elimination games, and there'll be many more to come down the road. But here we are into week 9, and we've got 2 elimination games that, in my mind, that will play big into the postseason play.
2 great atmospheres: Alabama, Texas A&M. Those great college football environments. Who knows what's going to happen with Vandy?
Right.
This is the year for the smart schools. So going over into the ACC, we start off on Thursday with a game. 2 teams that were bad last year, bottom floor, are rising now. Pitt being one of the teams at the top of the conference. Again, elimination type game, because these are 2 teams that are, while they're in front of Clemson in Miami, they're still behind, in theory. So Notre Dame playing one of the more exciting has absolutely
Mm-hmm.
nothing to do with us, but I just like Navy and
Yeah.
Army. I'm actually
Yeah.
got to get to that Army Navy game because that's going to be
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
But FSU UM
Yeah.
being one team it means the world for right
Mm-hmm.
now because they have to continue to progress because they
Right.
have college football aspirations. Another team they to have any hope for a bowl game
Mm-hmm.
with expectation. Talk about that a little bit?
Yeah.
The dynamics of going into rivalry games like that.
Well, it's the later in the season, and the more pressure schools like Miami are going to have not to make a mistake. They know that maybe the light at the end of the tunnel, they can barely see it, but they're on the road to maybe doing that. Can they maintain that focus? And then Florida State should come in loose. They have nothing to lose. Nobody's picking them. Everybody's giving them a hard time. It's one of these situations where they may come in here and lose. And again, they need to be able to execute on offense and just catch the ball.
Mm,
I think you're seeing that in college football. There are a lot of drops.
yes.
And so if one of those drops, if one of those was just if the ball was caught, they're game changers. So if kids can focus enough, and if the Florida State offensive line gives whoever's at quarterback time to execute and the receivers catch, I think they've got a great chance to win the game. But defensively, they got to step up. Everything has to go their way, and Miami has to make some errors.
Mm-hmm.
But we've all seen that can happen in college football. So I don't care what your record is in a rivalry game. There's too much pride on the line for schools not to play to their best.
Oh man, yeah, because bragging rights
Yeah.
everywhere you go. I've played in that rivalry, played in that game
Mm-hmm.
5 times in 4 years. We had the rematch in the
Yeah.
Orange Bowl, but just again as you talked about it, just drops.
Yeah.
It really comes down to that. Everybody's like, well, we need to fire this coach, fire that
Mm-hmm.
coach, and when things like this
Yeah.
happen, somebody has to go. But I tell people, I promise you, there's no drill in football where you practice like, okay, I'm going to get
Yeah.
wide open and I just want to work on
Yeah.
dropping the ball. That one touchdown against Georgia Tech, I have a friend, Kevin Sullivan, who's a Hall of Fame coach here. He has a saying: if it was a spear, it would have killed you. When you try to catch it with your chest, and that would have
Yeah.
definitely got him
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And then again, another game. Duke is still fighting for the opportunity to be able to win the ACC. SMU is a team
Yeah.
that came over, one of the better G5 teams from last
Mm-hmm.
year, are coming in and making noise in the ACC. So Manny Diaz has those guys on point. Rhett
Mm-hmm.
Lashley has those guys on point. Both of them, Rhett coached for Manny at Miami. Any thoughts on that game?
Well, I think they are the darling of the ACC right now. Even if you've got Miami and Clemson and Notre Dame, they're supposed to win. But you've got a newcomer in the conference. They've already got 6 wins this year. And whoever thought the darlings of the SEC probably this year are going to be Vandy.
Hmm.
So you'd have Vandy and SMU as probably teams that are more talked about than maybe some of the headliners. But that's what makes college football so great. Before the season, you probably weren't thinking either one of these teams were going to be competitive in their respective conferences. And here we are to where one's already bowl eligible and Vandy's fighting for bowl eligibility. So that's what makes college football so great. Again, it shows you the parity that you mentioned earlier, that you just can't take anybody for granted.
No.
You've got to play your best ball. And even if you're not at your best, you've got to be best at the right time of the game to be able to win.
SMU, just one of my favorite places that
Mm.
I first visit. I may just check out a game there every year. I just really like Dallas,
Yeah.
like the campus, also like the stadium.
Yeah.
It's not big, but it gets loud, and there's not a bad seat there. But again, a lot of games,
Yeah.
everything is starting to shape. Games have to be played, and that's
Right.
kind of where it comes down to that. A lot of teams still in here. Hopefully, after the next couple of weeks,
Right.
we'll be able to kind of get a
Mhm.
better idea. Is this the week that they released the college football playoff rankings?
No, it's not until November the 4th.
Okay.
So we got a couple of weeks there. But once that date hits, we'll be able to really define who's in play and who's not, and what are some realistic matchups.
All right. Well, this week I'll be getting a chance to go down to the Miami Florida State game as a scout. If you're a member of the Chairman's Club, that's one of the benefits. You should check that out. It's a really cool experience for you to be able to check out college football up close and personal and be able to understand the business of it. Lots of good games. Appreciate you guys for coming here and chopping it up with us and listening to us talk about college football and as it relates to the TaxSlayer Gator Bowl. Played here January 2nd. between the SEC team and the ACC team. It's going to be wherever we pick. It's going to be great. Make sure you get your tickets. For Greg McGarity, I'm at Big Game James _36. We will see you next time.
Welcome back for our off the field update. We are in a new location and looking a little different than normal. We want to talk about a Bold Ladies event that we have happening this evening. So I'll let Katie talk about it.
We are at the Brooks Family YMCA on the newly opened Urban Courts. If you have not been here, you definitely need to come check it out. If you have not RSVP'd for pickleball tonight and you're a Bold Lady, just come. It'll be fun. Okay, first, I don't know. Like, they gave me these things. I know nothing about pickleball. Kayla and Aaron are way more advanced than me, but it doesn't matter. We're going to teach a clinic tonight. I think they said like 3/4 of the people have never picked up a pickleball paddle. Is it called a paddle? A paddle. And so you're going to learn this evening. The event starts at 4:30 at the Brooks YMCA. Be sure you tune in next week as we recap this awesome event. And we hope everyone is dressed just like we are for this fun evening activity. And then this is not our only stop for this week.
This is not. You're going to see us at another location shortly. We forgot to film our second adventure of the day. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. We have had such a fun week of Gator Bowl charities off the field events. So after we filmed our pickleball video, we headed to some Pop Warner parks. We've been all across the city at different Greater Jacksonville Pop Warner parks this week, welcoming the teams that have made it to the Little Gator Bowl. So they are officially bowl bound. We have 7 games that will be played in Everbank Stadium on November 3rd. So the Sunday after Florida, Georgia, the next day, there will be 7 Pop Warner games here in the stadium that we love hosting. It's one of our favorite events every single year. There's a lot of information on our social media. You can check out the Bowl Bound Countdown campaign that we've done with all the different teams, and we hope to see you there. I think games start at 8:30 and run through about 6 o'clock that evening. So it is $5 admission, open to the public, so come support some of these awesome young student athletes. We have 6-year-olds all the way up to 12-year-olds, so it's going to be a great day. Additionally, we've been at some MVTs this week in St. Johns County that you'll learn about. Want to remind everyone that the scholarship deadline is next Monday, so make sure if you know any senior student athletes across Northeast Florida that they get their scholarship application in. We hope to see you at the Little Gator Bowl. And then one other event in our busy week, next Wednesday, we have an event called Wicked Rivalry. It is at Wicked Barley from 5 to 7 p.m. It is a social event celebrating one of the favorite weeks of the year, Florida, Georgia. So there's some information in the email below. Make sure you RSVP if you plan to come, and we hope to see you there. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.